Sick Mother Bear refused to get medicines, but when she saw this human baby, everything changed. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Every bit of your support helps us create even more amazing stories for you. The morning sun filtered through the ancient pines of Whispering Woods, casting dappled shadows across the forest floor. At the edge of a small clearing stood a weathered cabin where Park Ranger Olivia Reed lived with her 10-month-old daughter, Emma. The cabin sat just a mile from the main ranger station, positioned perfectly for Olivia to monitor this quieter section of the national park. Olivia stood at her window, binoculars pressed to her eyes, her forehead creased with worry. For 3 days now, she had been tracking a female grizzly bear who had taken shelter beneath a massive, fallen oak tree about 200 yards from the cabin. The bear was clearly sick. Her movements were sluggish, her coat dull and patchy. Most concerning was the way she limped heavily on her right front paw, which appeared swollen and possibly infected. "She's getting worse, Marcus." Olivia spoke into her radio, her voice tight with concern. "She hasn't moved from that spot since yesterday afternoon. I think the infection is spreading." On the other end, Marcus Chen, the park's wildlife veterinarian, sighed heavily. "We need to treat her soon, Liv. If that wound goes septic, we'll lose her, and possibly the 2 cubs she's been caring for." The cubs. Olivia's heart clenched as she thought about the 2 small bears who had been wandering anxiously around their mother, occasionally nudging her massive form as if begging her to get up. The mother bear would struggle to her feet, take a few painful steps, then collapse again, her breath coming in labored pants. Yesterday, Marcus and 2 other rangers had attempted to approach with tranquilizers and antibiotics, but the mother bear had summoned an astonishing burst of strength, roaring and charging at them despite her weakened state. Her maternal instinct to protect her cubs had overpowered her physical limitations, making any approach too dangerous for the team. "She won't let us anywhere near her," Olivia murmured, watching as one of the cubs pawed helplessly at its mother's face. "And she's teaching those cubs to fear us too." Behind her, Emma babbled happily from her playpen, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the woods. Olivia turned to look at her daughter, her heart full of love for this tiny human who had changed her life in every way. Emma's dark curls framed her chubby face, her wide brown eyes taking in the world with wonder and curiosity. "I know, sweetie," Olivia said softly. "I wish there was something we could do." As if in response to her mother's words, Emma pulled herself up on the edge of the playpen, bouncing excitedly. Her tiny fingers reached toward the window, as if she sensed something important was happening outside. A crackle from the radio pulled Olivia's attention back. "We're going to try again this afternoon," Marcus said determinedly. "Dr. Peterson is bringing in a specialized tranquilizer gun with longer range. Maybe we can dart her from a distance." Olivia nodded, though she knew Marcus couldn't see her. "I'll keep watch until you arrive, but hurry. I don't think she has much time left." She set down the radio and returned to the window. Through the binoculars, she could see the mother bear's sides heaving with effort, her eyes dull with pain. The cubs had settled beside her, pressing their small bodies against hers for comfort. The sight made Olivia's throat tighten with emotion. What Olivia couldn't know was that in just a few hours, her own precious Emma would become the unlikely hero in this desperate situation, bridging the gap between human compassion and wild instinct in a way no one could have imagined. 2, the afternoon brought no relief to the suffering bear. Through her binoculars, Olivia watched as the mother bear's condition deteriorated by the hour. The cubs had begun wandering farther from their mother, their playful curiosity dimmed by hunger and confusion. Olivia checked her watch for the 5th time in 20 minutes. Marcus and his team were late. "Come on, guys," she whispered, scanning the forest path that led to her cabin. The radio had been silent for nearly an hour. The last update from Marcus indicated they were having trouble with the equipment. The specialized tranquilizer gun had been damaged during transport. Emma had fallen asleep for her afternoon nap, giving Olivia a moment of quiet to prepare. She had laid out supplies on the kitchen table: extra bandages, antiseptic, water bottles, and a first aid kit. Though she wasn't a veterinarian like Marcus, she had assisted him many times in emergency situations with injured wildlife. A sudden commotion outside drew her attention back to the window. One of the bear cubs had ventured, dangerously close to the cabin, its small nose lifted to the air, sniffing curiously. The mother bear let out a weak, plaintive call, but the cub continued its exploration, drawn by some unseen force toward the human dwelling. Olivia's heart raced. If the mother bear thought her cub was in danger, she might find the strength to charge the cabin, putting them all at risk. She needed to scare the cub back to its mother without alarming it. Just as she reached for the door, a sleepy cry came from Emma's room. The timing couldn't be worse. Torn between attending to her daughter and dealing with the approaching cub, Olivia made a split-second decision. She hurried to Emma's room, scooping her daughter into her arms. "Shh, it's okay, sweetie," she soothed, rocking Emma gently. "Mommy just needs to take care of something important." With Emma balanced on her hip, Olivia returned to the window. To her horror, the cub was now right up against the cabin wall, directly beneath the window where she stood. Worse still, the mother bear had managed to drag herself halfway across the clearing, her eyes fixed on her wandering cub and the cabin it approached. Emma, now fully awake, followed her mother's gaze out the window. The moment her eyes landed on the bear cub below, she let out a delighted squeal, bouncing in Olivia's arms and pointing excitedly. The sound caught the attention of both bears. The cub looked up, curious about the strange noise coming from above. The mother bear froze, her ears perked forward, listening intently. For a breathless moment, Olivia stood perfectly still, holding Emma close, afraid that any movement might provoke the protective mother. But instead of growling or charging, the mother bear tilted her head, her eyes fixed not on Olivia, but on Emma. Something in the baby's innocent joy seemed to catch the bear's attention. The aggression that had flared in her eyes when the rangers approached was noticeably absent. Olivia's radio crackled to life, making her jump. "Olivia, we're about 10 minutes out," Marcus's voice came through. "How's our patient doing?" Without taking her eyes off the scene outside, Olivia reached for the radio. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "you won't believe what's happening. The mother bear is right outside my cabin. One of the cubs wandered over and now she's followed. But she's not aggressive, she's watching Emma." "Stay inside," Marcus ordered immediately, his voice sharp with concern. "Don't make any sudden movements, we're coming as fast as we can." Olivia knew staying inside was the safest option, but as she watched the mother bear struggle to remain standing, a crazy idea began to form in her mind. The bear had responded differently to Emma than to the rangers. Could it be that the baby somehow didn't register as a threat in the way that adults did? "I think she's going to collapse again," Olivia reported, watching as the bear's legs trembled with the effort of standing. "She doesn't have 10 minutes, Marcus." Before Marcus could respond, the mother bear let out a pained whimper and sank to the ground, just 30 feet from the cabin. The cub immediately ran to its mother, pawing at her face and making distressed noises. The second cub, seeing its mother fall, hurried from the shelter of the fallen oak to join its sibling. In that moment, watching the cubs' desperate attempts to rouse their mother, Olivia made a decision that would defy all wildlife management protocols, a decision that could cost her job, or worse, put her daughter in danger. But somewhere deep in her heart, she felt a connection between the mother bear fighting to stay alive for her cubs and herself, a single mother raising Emma alone in this wilderness. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she whispered into the radio, "but I have to try something. Just get here as fast as you can." With that, she silenced the radio, ignoring the immediate protests crackling through the speaker. Taking a deep breath, she looked down at Emma, who was still watching the bears with fascination. "You and me, baby girl," Olivia whispered, pressing a kiss to Emma's forehead. "We're going to save that mama bear." Chassis. The wooden porch steps creaked beneath Olivia's feet as she slowly emerged from the cabin, Emma secure in her arms. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain the bears could hear it. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat to safety, but the sight of the mother bear's labored breathing pushed her forward. 20 feet now separated them from the fallen bear. The cubs, initially startled by the human's appearance, huddled against their mother, making small, distressed sounds. The mother bear's eyes, though glazed with pain, tracked Olivia's every movement. A warning rumble vibrated in her throat, but it was weak, a fraction of her usual power. "It's okay," Olivia said softly, not to the bear, but to herself and Emma. "We're going to help." Emma, sensing the tension in her mother's body, had grown unusually quiet, her wide eyes fixed on the bear family, taking in the scene with a seriousness that seemed beyond her 10 months of age. Then, something extraordinary happened. Emma extended her small hand toward the bears and let out a gentle, cooing sound. The mother bear's ears twitched. The rumbling in her throat quieted. Encouraged, Olivia took another careful step forward. "That's right, Emma. Show her we're friends." The mother bear's massive head lifted slightly, her nostrils flaring as she caught their scent. Olivia froze, waiting for signs of aggression, but instead the bear's eyes remained fixed on Emma. There was something in that gaze, a recognition, perhaps, of another mother and child. 15 feet apart now. Close enough for Olivia to see the angry red swelling on the bear's front paw, where a deep puncture wound oozed with infection. A fight with another predator, perhaps, or an unfortunate encounter with human garbage. Whatever the cause, it was killing her slowly. "We can help you," Olivia whispered. "Please let us help." As if understanding her words, the mother bear made a soft chuffing sound. One of the cubs, bolder than its sibling, took a hesitant step toward Emma and Olivia, its nose working curiously. The mother bear didn't call it back. Emma wriggled in Olivia's arms, clearly wanting to get down. For a moment, Olivia tightened her grip, the thought of her baby on the ground near wild bears unthinkable. But some instinct, some deep maternal knowledge, made her reconsider. Very slowly, never taking her eyes off the mother bear, Olivia lowered Emma to sit on the grass just in front of her legs, keeping her hands on her daughter's shoulders. Emma immediately reached toward the curious cub, babbling happily. The bold cub took another step forward, then another, until it was just a few feet from Emma. The mother bear watched but made no move to call it back. Instead, her eyes held Olivia's in what felt like a silent communication, one mother to another. In the distance, Olivia heard the rumble of approaching vehicles. Marcus and his team were almost here. She had minutes, maybe seconds, before they would burst into the clearing, potentially shattering this fragile connection. The cub was close enough now that Emma could almost touch it. Olivia's hands hovered, ready to snatch her daughter back at the first sign of danger. But the cub seemed merely curious, not aggressive. It sniffed the air between them, making small, questioning noises. Emma, with the fearless innocence of a baby, laughed delightedly. The sound, pure and joyful, seemed to echo through the clearing. And then, something miraculous happened. The mother bear's tense posture relaxed just slightly. Her eyes, fixed on Emma, softened. Seizing the moment, Olivia slowly reached into the pocket of her ranger jacket, where she had stashed a syringe of antibiotics from her emergency medical kit. It wasn't the proper treatment. Marcus would have a much more comprehensive approach, but it might buy the bear enough time. "Just a little longer," she murmured, as much to the bear as to Emma and herself. "Just trust us a little longer." The sound of car doors slamming echoed from down the path. Voices called Olivia's name, urgent and worried. The moment of truth had arrived. "For Olivia." Marcus's voice cut through the tension of the clearing, but he stopped dead in his tracks when he rounded the bend in the path and saw the scene before him. Dr. Peterson and 2 other rangers nearly collided with his back. "Nobody move," Marcus hissed, throwing out an arm to stop his team. "Nobody make a sound." The tableau before them defied everything they knew about wildlife management. Olivia kneeling in the grass with Emma sitting before her, a bear cub just feet away, and the massive form of the mother bear watching them all with an unnerving stillness. Olivia didn't turn at their arrival. She didn't dare break the fragile connection that had formed. Instead, she raised one hand slightly, signaling for them to stay back. In her other hand, the syringe of antibiotics caught the afternoon sunlight. Marcus, after years of working with Olivia, trusted her judgment enough to hold his position, though every professional instinct screamed at him to intervene. He signaled for his team to ready the tranquilizer gun, just in case. The bear cub, startled by the newcomers, retreated to its mother's side. Emma made a disappointed sound, reaching after her new friend. The mother bear's eyes flicked to the rangers, and a low growl rumbled in her chest. The moment was slipping away. Olivia could feel it. Then Emma did something that made everyone's heart stop. She pushed herself onto her hands and knees and began crawling directly toward the mother bear and her cubs. "Emma, no!" The words escaped Olivia's lips before she could stop them. Behind her, she heard the metallic click of the tranquilizer gun being readied. But something extraordinary happened. Instead of reacting with fear or aggression, the mother bear made a soft, chuffing sound, the same sound she used to call her cubs. Emma, as if understanding the invitation, continued her determined crawl forward. Olivia moved with her daughter, hands hovering inches above Emma's small body, ready to snatch her back. She was vaguely aware of Marcus whispering urgent instructions to his team, but her focus remained entirely on her daughter and the bear. 10 feet, 8 feet, 6 feet. Emma stopped just short of the bear family, sitting back on her haunches and extending a tiny hand, palm up, in a gesture so trusting it brought tears to Olivia's eyes. The mother bear, her massive head now level with the small human child, stretched her muzzle forward. Every adult in the clearing held their breath. The bear's nose touched Emma's palm, the gentlest of contacts. Emma giggled, unafraid. Then, to everyone's amazement, the mother bear lowered her head to the ground, exposing her neck in what looked like a gesture of submission. More than that, it looked like trust. Olivia seized the moment. With trembling hands, she moved forward and knelt beside the mother bear's infected paw. The bear's eyes tracked her movement but made no move to stop her. Working quickly, Olivia cleaned the wound as best she could with antiseptic wipes from her pocket, then injected the antibiotics directly into the swollen tissue. The bear flinched but remained still. Olivia backed away, gathering Emma into her arms. Only then did she turn to face Marcus and his team, whose expressions ranged from shock to disbelief. "I think she'll let you help her now," Olivia said quietly, tears streaming down her face. "She understands we're trying to save her." Marcus approached slowly, medical kit in hand. To everyone's amazement, the mother bear remained calm, watching them with cautious but no longer hostile eyes. The cubs, taking their cue from their mother, sat quietly beside her. "In 20 years as a wildlife vet," Marcus whispered as he knelt beside the bear, "I've never seen anything like this." Olivia held Emma close, the baby's head tucked under her chin. "Sometimes," she replied softly, "it takes a child to remind us that compassion transcends species." As Marcus and his team worked to treat the mother bear, Olivia carried Emma back to the porch of their cabin. From this safe distance, they watched the rescue unfold, a miracle made possible by a baby's fearless heart and a mother's desperate love, spanning the divide between human and wild. The days that followed took on a dreamlike quality for Olivia. Word of the extraordinary encounter spread quickly through the ranger station, then to the park administration, and finally to the local media. By the end of the week, reporters had gathered at the park entrance, eager to hear about the miracle baby who had tamed a wild bear. Olivia refused all interviews, protecting Emma from the unwanted attention. Instead, she focused on what really mattered: the recovery of the mother bear, whom the rangers had named Willow. Willow and her cubs had been relocated to a wildlife rehabilitation facility on the outskirts of the park. Under Marcus's care, she received proper medical treatment for her infected wound, which turned out to be from a poacher's trap. A jagged piece of metal had remained embedded in her paw, causing the dangerous infection that had nearly killed her. 3 days after the encounter, Marcus invited Olivia and Emma to visit the facility. "She's asking for you," he joked over the phone, but something in his voice suggested he wasn't entirely kidding. The rehabilitation center was a peaceful place, with spacious enclosures nestled among the trees. Marcus led them to a private area at the back where Willow and her cubs had been housed away from visitors. "She's doing remarkably well," Marcus explained as they walked. "The antibiotics you administered probably saved her life. Another day, and the infection would have reached her bloodstream." Olivia shifted Emma on her hip, the baby unusually quiet, as if sensing the importance of where they were going. "And the cubs?" "Healthy and active. They've been wonderful company for her during recovery." When they reached Willow's enclosure, Olivia stopped in her tracks. The mother bear lay on a bed of straw under a shaded platform, her injured paw bandaged and propped on a special cushion. Her cubs tumbled playfully nearby, occasionally running to their mother to check on her. Willow's eyes, clear and alert now, not glazed with pain, immediately fixed on Emma. "Watch this," Marcus said softly. He approached the enclosure fence and made a gentle clicking sound. Willow's ears perked up. Slowly, with some difficulty, she rose from her straw bed and limped to the fence, her nose pressing against the wire. Emma squealed with delight, recognizing her forest friend. She reached out, her tiny fingers wiggling in the air toward the bear. Olivia, trusting Marcus's judgment but still protective, moved closer so Emma could see better, but kept a safe distance from the fence. "I've worked with injured bears for 15 years, Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. "They usually avoid human contact at all costs when recovering, associating us with the pain of treatment. But Willow, she watches for us. For you, specifically, and for Emma." As if to emphasize his point, Willow made the same soft, chuffing sound she had made in the clearing, a sound typically reserved for calling her cubs. One of the cubs immediately trotted over, pressing against its mother's side and peering curiously at the humans through the fence. It's like she's showing us her baby, Olivia whispered, tears filling her eyes. And showing her baby that you're not a threat, Marcus added. Bears have long memories, especially for those who help them in times of need. They stayed for nearly an hour, Emma babbling happily at the bears while Olivia and Marcus discussed Willow's treatment plan. Before they left, Olivia found herself placing her palm against the fence, directly opposite Willow's nose. "Get well soon," she said softly. "Your babies need you, just like mine needs me." Willow blinked slowly, her dark eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that transcended language. In that moment, Olivia felt a profound connection with the wild creature. Two mothers, different species, but united by the fierce love they held for their children. As they walked back to the car, Emma's head growing heavy on Olivia's shoulders, the baby drifted toward sleep. Marcus asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "How did you know it would work?" Approaching her with Emma, "Every protocol, every bit of training we have says that was the most dangerous thing you could have done." Olivia was quiet for a long moment, considering. The truth was, she hadn't known. It had been instinct, desperation, and perhaps something more, a belief in the power of the connection between mothers. "I didn't know," she finally admitted. "But I saw how she looked at Emma, not with fear or aggression, but with recognition, like she saw herself and her cubs reflected in us." She adjusted Emma's weight in her arms. "In that moment, we weren't Ranger and Bear. We were just two mothers trying to protect our babies." Marcus nodded slowly. "Well, whatever it was, you created a miracle out there. And you've given us valuable insight into bear behavior that might help save others in the future." As they reached her truck, Olivia carefully secured the sleeping Emma in her car seat. The setting sun bathed the forest in golden light, and somewhere in the distance, a bird called to its mate. "Do you think she'll remember us?" Olivia asked suddenly. "When she's released back into the wild?" Marcus smiled. "Bears can remember human faces for years, even decades. But more than that, I think she'll remember the feeling, safety, trust, compassion." He nodded toward Emma. "And if you ask me, that little one will carry this experience with her too, even if only in her heart." Olivia looked at her sleeping daughter, marveling at the innocent power she possessed, the ability to bridge worlds that adults had long assumed were separate. In Emma's eyes, there had been no danger, no divide between human and wild, only curiosity and open-hearted acceptance. As they drove away, Olivia couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror at the Rehabilitation Center fading into the trees. Somewhere inside, a mother bear was healing, growing stronger for her cubs with each passing day, just as Olivia grew stronger for Emma. Two mothers, two families, one moment of connection that had changed everything. 6 months passed before Willow and her cubs were ready for release back into the wild. The infection had completely healed, leaving only a slight limp that Marcus assured Olivia would fade with time. The cubs had grown noticeably, their playful antics becoming more coordinated, more bear-like, as they prepared for their return to the forest. The day of the release was clear and cool, the first hints of autumn touching the highest leaves of the trees. Olivia had been invited to witness the event, a rare privilege typically reserved for the rehabilitation team. She stood at the edge of a remote clearing, Emma bundled against the morning chill in her arms, as Marcus and his team made final preparations. "We've chosen a spot far from human trails," Marcus explained, checking the tracking collar they had fitted around Willow's neck. "Good berry patches nearby, a stream with plenty of fish, and no known territorial males in the immediate area." Olivia nodded. watching as the team opened the large transport crate containing Willow and her cubs. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a small black nose poked out, followed by the curious face of one of the cubs. It sniffed the air tentatively, then retreated back inside. "They're cautious," Marcus said with approval. "That's good. We don't want them too comfortable around humans." "Except for us," Olivia thought, but didn't say aloud. She bounced Emma gently, the baby watching the crate with unusual focus for her age. Minutes ticked by. The rehabilitation team retreated to stand with Olivia, giving the bears space. Finally, Willow emerged, her massive form moving with the graceful power that had returned to her body. She paused at the entrance to the crate, scanning the clearing carefully, her nose working to catalog every scent. When her eyes fell on Olivia and Emma, she went still. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. "She recognizes you," Marcus whispered. Emma, as if sensing the significance of the moment, let out one of her happy babbles, reaching towards the bear with grabbing hands. The sound carried across the clearing. Willow's ears perked forward. She made that familiar chuffing noise, and her cubs tumbled out of the crate to stand beside her, their small heads swiveling to locate the source of the human baby's call. Instead of immediately heading for the trees as expected, Willow began a slow, deliberate walk directly toward Olivia and Emma. Marcus tensed beside them. "Stand very still," he murmured. "She's not showing any signs of aggression, but let's not take chances." Olivia remained rooted to the spot, though every maternal instinct screamed at her to back away, to protect Emma. But something deeper, the same intuition that had guided her that fateful day by her cabin, told her to trust, to wait. Willow stopped about 15 feet away, close enough for Olivia to see the intelligence in her dark eyes, the healthy shine that had returned to her coat. The cubs pressed against their mother's legs, curious but cautious. For a long moment, bear and human regarded each other across the space between their worlds. Then, with deliberate slowness, Willow lowered her massive head in what looked remarkably like a boo. She held the position for several heartbeats before raising her head again, her eyes finding Emma's. Emma, with the pure instinct of a child, waved her small hand. And then, in a movement so swift it took everyone by surprise, Willow turned and lumbered toward the forest, her cubs scrambling to keep up. At the tree line, she paused for one final look back, silhouetted against the deep green of the pines. Then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows where she belonged. "Well," Marcus said softly, breaking the spell of silence that had fallen over the group. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like that." He turned to Olivia, his expression a mixture of awe and scientific curiosity. It was almost like she was saying, "Thank you." Olivia kissed the top of Emma's head, breathing in her sweet baby scent. I think she was saying goodbye. As they walked back to the vehicles, Emma fell asleep against Olivia's shoulder, exhausted from the morning's excitement. The rehabilitation team chatted among themselves, already discussing the data they would gather from Willow's tracking collar, the scientific papers that might come from this unusual case. But Olivia's mind was elsewhere. She thought about the mysterious connections that existed in this world, between mothers and children, between species supposedly divided by insurmountable differences. She thought about trust freely given and the healing power of compassion. "You know," Marcus said, falling into step beside her, "the data from her collar will let us know where she is, if you ever wanted to check on her, from a safe distance, of course." Olivia smiled. "I'd like that, for Emma, when she's older, so she can know the story, not just the one that's already spreading through the park like wildfire, but the true one." "And what is the true story?" Marcus asked. Olivia looked down at her sleeping daughter, this tiny human who had bridged an ancient divide with nothing more than innocence and trust. That sometimes healing begins when we see past our differences to recognize ourselves in others, even if those others have sharp teeth and claws. Marcus laughed softly. I think there's a children's book in there somewhere. Maybe, Olivia agreed, one with a very happy ending. As they reached the truck, Olivia glanced back one more time at the forest where Willow and her cubs had disappeared. Somewhere in those green depths, a family was finding its way home. Stronger for having been broken, wiser for having trusted. Just like her own. 7. The seasons turned, painting the forest in autumn gold, then winter white, and finally the fresh green of new spring. Willow's tracking collar sent regular data to the ranger station, showing her healthy movement throughout her territory. Occasionally, hikers would report glimpses of a mother bear with 2 growing cubs, always at a distance, always retreating deeper into the forest when spotted. All except once. It happened on a warm day in late spring, almost a year after the encounter that had changed so many lives. Olivia had taken the day off to celebrate Emma's 2nd birthday with a picnic at a small, secluded meadow within the park boundaries. It was a special place Olivia had discovered years ago, rarely visited by other hikers due to its remote location. Emma, now a sturdy toddler with sure feet and endless curiosity, ran through the wildflowers, squealing with delight as butterflies erupted from the grass around her. Her dark curls bounced with each step, her laughter echoing across the meadow. Olivia spread a blanket beneath the shade of an old oak tree, unpacking sandwiches and the small birthday cake she had baked that morning. She kept one eye on Emma as she arranged their lunch, marveling at how quickly her baby had grown. "Don't go too far, sweet pea," she called as Emma ventured toward the edge of the meadow where the trees began. "Stay where Mommy can see you." Emma paused, turning to wave at her mother, then continued her exploration, following a yellow butterfly that danced just beyond her reaching fingers. Olivia smiled and returned to her task, slicing apples into a small container. A sudden silence made her look up. The bird song that had filled the meadow had stopped. Even the insects seemed to have quieted. Emma stood frozen at the meadow's edge, her back to Olivia, staring into the trees. "Emma?" Olivia called, a note of worry entering her voice. She rose quickly, her hand instinctively going to the bear spray attached to her belt, a habit from years of ranger work. Emma didn't respond, didn't move, just continued to stare. Olivia began walking toward her daughter, her pace quickening with each step. "Emma, honey, come back to the blanket now." As Olivia drew closer, she noticed something moving in the shadows beneath the trees. Something large. Her heart leapt into her throat and she broke into a run. "Emma!" Just as she reached her daughter, ready to snatch her up and retreat, Olivia saw what had captured Emma's attention. There, standing just within the tree line, was a massive grizzly bear. 2 smaller bears, no longer cubs but not yet adolescents, flanked her sides. "Willow." Olivia froze, one hand on Emma's shoulder. The tracking data had shown that Willow's territory was miles from here. What were the chances? The bear's intelligent eyes fixed on them, showing clear recognition. She made no aggressive moves, no warnings. She simply stood, watching, as if she had been waiting. "Bear!" Emma exclaimed, pointing with excitement. "Bear, Mama!" Olivia knelt beside her daughter, keeping her eyes on Willow. "Yes, sweetheart, that's a bear. We need to be very quiet and still." But Emma, with a child's intuitive connection to the extraordinary, seemed to sense there was no danger. "My bear," she said with perfect clarity, and Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Could Emma possibly remember? She had been so young when it happened. Willow shifted her weight, and Olivia tensed, prepared to scoop up Emma and back away slowly. But instead of approaching, Willow made that distinctive chuffing sound, the same one Olivia had heard a year ago, the sound a mother bear uses to call her cubs. One of the young bears bounded forward a few steps, then stopped, looking back at its mother as if seeking permission. Willow remained still, her eyes never leaving Olivia and Emma. What happened next defied explanation. The young bear, bolder than its sibling, approached to the very edge of the tree line, just 20 feet from where Emma stood. It sat back on its haunches, mimicking the posture of a curious dog, its head tilted slightly to one side. Emma giggled, and before Olivia could stop her, waved at the bear just as she had done a year ago. The young bear raised a paw, moving it in what looked astonishingly like a wave in return. "Oh my God," Olivia whispered, her hand tightening on Emma's shoulder. Was it coincidence, mimicry, or something more? A memory passed from mother to cub. For several breathless minutes this impossible tableau held. The human mother and child, the bear mother and her growing cubs, regarding each other across the space between their worlds. No fear, no threat, only recognition. Then, with regal deliberation, Willow turned and moved deeper into the forest. Her cubs, after a moment's hesitation, followed her. The bolder one paused for one last look at Emma before disappearing into the green shadows. When they were gone, Olivia realized she was trembling. Emma looked up at her, brown eyes wide with wonder. "Bear's gone," she said, sounding disappointed. Olivia lifted Emma into her arms, holding her close as she scanned the forest edge one last time. Her ranger instincts told her the bears had truly departed, moving deeper into their wilderness home. With her heart still racing from the encounter, she carried Emma back to their picnic blanket, her mind whirling with questions that had no easy answers. "Did you like seeing the bears, sweetie?" she asked, settling Emma on the blanket and brushing a wild curl from her forehead. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "My bears," she repeated, with the absolute certainty only a toddler could muster. "Birthday bears." Olivia smiled, cutting a small piece of birthday cake and placing it on Emma's plate. "Yes, honey, I think they came especially for your birthday." The coincidence seemed too perfect to be anything else. Willow appearing on this day of all days, in this meadow of all places. As Emma happily devoured her cake, Olivia took out her phone and texted Marcus. "You won't believe what just happened. Willow found us. In the North Meadow, all three healthy and looking good." His response came seconds later. "Impossible. Tracking data has her 12 miles east." Olivia frowned, glancing at the forest where the bears had disappeared. "Check again." It was definitely her. Emma recognized her too. While she waited for Marcus's reply, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that Willow's appearance hadn't been accidental. The bears' territory was indeed miles away, according to the tracking data. What would bring her so far from her usual range on this particular day? Her phone buzzed again. Caller must be malfunctioning. "We'll check when I get back to station. Keep safe. Document everything." Emma had finished her cake and was now lying on her back on the blanket, watching clouds drift across the blue spring sky. Olivia snapped a quick photo of her daughter looking peaceful and content, then turned the camera toward the forest edge where they had seen the bears, documenting the location. As a ranger, she knew the scientific value of their encounter, but as a mother, she treasured it as something far more personal, a birthday gift beyond price. "Time to head home, birthday girl," Olivia said after they had finished their lunch. We need to stop by the ranger station to tell Uncle Marcus about our bear friends." Emma helped pack up the picnic supplies with the clumsy enthusiasm of a toddler, chattering about the bears and the butterflies and how this was the best birthday ever. Olivia listened with half an ear, her thoughts still on Willow. The bear's appearance felt significant, like the closing of a circle that had begun a year ago beside her cabin. As they walked back toward the trail that would lead them to their car, Emma suddenly stopped and pointed to something on the ground. "Look, Mama." Olivia knelt beside her daughter, expecting to see an interesting rock or perhaps a colorful insect. Instead, she found herself staring at a perfect bear paw print pressed into a patch of soft earth. Beside it was a smaller print, one of the cubs, and beside that, something that made Olivia's breath catch. Scattered across the paw prints were early summer blackberries, perfectly ripe and arranged in what could only be a deliberate pattern. "Berries," Emma exclaimed, reaching for them. "Wait, sweetie," Olivia said softly, holding her daughter's hand back. She studied the scene before them, trying to make sense of it. Bears did not leave food. Bears did not arrange berries in patterns. And yet, the berries formed a rough circle around the paw prints, with a small pile in the center. It could have been coincidence. Berries dropped from an unseen bush above, perhaps. But there was no berry bush overhead, and the arrangement was too precise to be random. "Can I eat?" Emma asked, eyeing the berries hungrily despite the cake she had just consumed. "No, honey. These are special berries. I think they're a present, but not for eating." Olivia took out her phone and photographed the arrangement, then carefully collected the berries into a small container from their picnic basket. She wasn't sure why she felt compelled to save them, only that they seemed important, evidence of something extraordinary that she couldn't quite explain. As they continued down the trail, Emma's small hand in hers, Olivia felt a strange mixture of wonder and unease. What had just happened transcended her understanding of wildlife behavior. It suggested a level of intelligence, of memory, perhaps even gratitude, that went beyond scientific explanation. One thing was certain: their connection with Willow was far from over. Near the ranger station buzzed with activity when Olivia and Emma arrived. A tour bus had broken down near the park entrance, and half a dozen rangers were coordinating to help the stranded visitors. Marcus was at the center of it all, radio in hand, issuing instructions with the calm efficiency that had made him such an effective head ranger. When he spotted Olivia and Emma, he handed the radio to another ranger and hurried over, his expression a mixture of concern and scientific curiosity. "Tell me everything," he said without preamble, leading them to a quiet corner of the visitor center. "Did you get photos?" Olivia settled Emma at a small table with crayons and paper, then showed Marcus the pictures on her phone. The forest edge where they had seen the bears, the paw prints in the dirt, and most importantly, the arrangement of berries. Marcus stared at the last photo for a long time, his brow furrowed. I don't even have a word for what this is." "I know," Olivia said quietly. "It doesn't make sense. Bears don't leave gifts." "No, they don't," Marcus agreed. He glanced at Emma, who was happily drawing what appeared to be brown blobs that were presumably bears. And they certainly don't travel miles outside their territory to visit a specific human on her birthday. Olivia took out the container of berries she had collected. "I saved these. I'm not sure why." Marcus examined the berries without touching them. Perfectly ripe blackberries, in a region where they shouldn't be fruiting for another few weeks at least. He looked up at Olivia, his scientific skepticism battling with the evidence before his eyes. "I've been tracking Willow's movements for a year. According to her caller, She hasn't deviated from her established territory until today, and this morning, the signal went stationary for 3 hours before suddenly jumping to a location near your meadow. Malfunctioning collar? Marcus shook his head. We've had other visual confirmations of her in the area where the collar indicated, up until today. He looked again at the photo of the berries. This is going to sound crazy, but I think Willow deliberately traveled to find you and Emma, and I think she brought these berries as some kind of offering. The word hung in the air between them, laden with implications neither was ready to fully articulate. An offering suggested intention, planning, complex thought processes that weren't supposed to exist in the wild animal brain. "What do we do with this?" Olivia finally asked. Marcus ran a hand through his graying hair. "Scientifically. Document everything. I'll adjust the tracking parameters on her collar to give us more frequent data points. Maybe there's a logical explanation we're missing." He didn't sound convinced. "Personally," he glanced at Emma again, "I think you and your daughter have formed a connection with this bear that goes beyond anything we understand. And I think you should honor that, whatever it means." Olivia nodded slowly. "There's something else, Marcus. When Emma saw Willow today, she said my bear, like she remembered her. But she was only 10 months old when we found Willow. She shouldn't have those memories." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Children often surprise us with what they retain. He smiled suddenly. "My daughter's in college now, but she still remembers a red balloon she lost when she was barely walking. The human brain is as mysterious as the wilderness sometimes." Before Olivia could respond, the radio at Marcus's belt crackled to life. "Chief, we've got a situation at the north entrance. Poachers spotted entering the restricted area." Marcus grabbed the radio. "Details?" "2 men, armed with rifles. Park camera caught them cutting the fence. They're in Sector 7, moving east." Olivia's blood ran cold. Sector 7 was dangerously close to where they had seen Willow and her cubs earlier, and poachers in this region were often after bear gallbladders and paws, valuable in certain black markets. Marcus must have had the same thought. "Assemble the response team. No sirens, no lights. I want them intercepted before they get any deeper into the park." He looked at Olivia. "You should take Emma home." But Olivia was already reaching for her ranger jacket, which she had left hanging on a hook by the door when she went on leave. "Willow is out there, Marcus. She's in danger." "This isn't your fight, Liv. You're off duty, and you have Emma to think about." Olivia looked at her daughter, still absorbed in her colorful bear drawings. A plan was already forming in her mind. "Sarah is still working in the education center, right? Emma loves her. She can watch her for a couple of hours while I help with the poachers." Marcus started to protest, but Olivia cut him off. "You know I'm the best tracker you have, and I know exactly where Willow was 2 hours ago. If these poachers are after bears, we need every advantage." After a moment's hesitation, Marcus nodded. "Fine, but you stay with the team. No heroics." 20 minutes later, Emma was settled in the education center with Sarah, happily participating in a nature craft project with a few other children. Olivia kissed her daughter goodbye, promising to return soon, then hurried to join the response team assembling in the parking lot. The team consisted of 4 park rangers, including Marcus and Olivia, and 2 local police officers who had jurisdiction in cases of poaching. They gathered around a map spread across the hood of a ranger vehicle, planning their approach. "Camera footage shows them entering here," Marcus said, pointing to a spot on the map. They were heading east, which puts them on a collision course with this valley. His finger traced a path that led directly toward the meadow where Olivia and Emma had encountered Willow. That valley is a natural funnel, Olivia added. Any wildlife in the area would likely move through it. If they're hunting bears. She didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone understood the stakes. We'll split into 2 teams, Marcus decided. Team 1 takes the main trail and approaches from the west. Team 2 circles around to this ridge and comes in from the east, effectively boxing them in. Olivia studied the map, an alternative strategy forming in her mind. There's another way, she said quietly, a game trail that runs parallel to the valley floor. It's not on the maps, but it would put us ahead of them if they're following the main wildlife paths. Marcus looked at her sharply. How do you know about this trail? I found it years ago, when I was doing wildlife surveys in that sector. It's narrow and overgrown, but it's faster than either of your proposed routes. After a moment's consideration, Marcus nodded. Okay, Olivia and I will take this hidden trail. The rest of you proceed as planned. Radio silence except for emergencies. These poachers are likely experienced, and we want the element of surprise. As the team dispersed to their vehicles, Marcus pulled Olivia aside. Are you sure about this? If these poachers are who I think they are, they're dangerous. We've had reports of this same group operating throughout the state. Olivia checked her bear spray and the small field kit attached to her belt. I'm sure. Willow risked everything to trust us when she was injured. I won't let her down now. The drive to the trailhead took 20 tense minutes. Olivia used the time to brief Marcus on exactly what she had observed about Willow and her cubs earlier that day, their size, condition, and behavior. The information might be crucial if they needed to identify and protect the bears. They parked the ranger vehicle in a concealed spot off the main road and continued on foot, moving silently through the underbrush. The hidden game trail was exactly where Olivia remembered, though more overgrown than it had been years ago. They followed it single file, every sense alert for signs of either poachers or bears. About a mile in, Olivia stopped suddenly, holding up a hand to halt Marcus behind her. She pointed to the ground where fresh boot prints crossed the game trail, 2 sets heading eastward, just as the camera footage had indicated. They're moving fast, Marcus whispered, examining the depth and spacing of the prints. And they're carrying heavy gear. Olivia nodded grimly. The boots had left deep impressions, suggesting men carrying significant weight, rifles perhaps, and equipment for processing their kills. The thought made her stomach turn. They continued more cautiously now, knowing the poachers were somewhere ahead. The game trail began to descend into the valley, winding among ancient pine trees, whose thick branches created a perpetual twilight beneath the canopy. Birds fell silent as they passed, a sure sign that others had recently moved through this area. The first crack of a rifle shot shattered the forest silence. Olivia and Marcus froze, exchanging alarmed glances. The sound had come from somewhere ahead, perhaps half a mile away. "Run," Olivia breathed, and they abandoned caution, sprinting down the trail toward the source of the shot. Marcus radioed the other teams as they ran, directing them to converge on their position. They burst from the tree line into a small clearing just in time to see 2 men standing over a large, dark form on the ground. One held a rifle, the other a large hunting knife. Between them, a bear lay motionless. "Park rangers, drop your weapons," Marcus shouted, his voice commanding even as he struggled to catch his breath. The men spun toward them. The one with the rifle raised it instinctively, then thought better of it when he saw Marcus's official uniform and the badge glinting on his chest. The other, however, lunged forward with the knife still in hand. Olivia reacted without thinking. She unholstered her bear spray and fired a long burst directly into the approaching man's face. He screamed, dropping the knife and falling to his knees, hands covering his eyes. The distraction was enough for Marcus to draw his service weapon and train it on the man with the rifle. "Drop it! Now!" For a tense moment, it seemed the poacher might risk a shot. Then, assessing the odds, he carefully lowered the rifle to the ground. "Face down, both of you," Marcus ordered, keeping his weapon trained on them as Olivia secured the fallen knife and rifle. "Hands behind your backs." Only when the poachers were restrained with plastic zip ties did Olivia turn her attention to the bear on the ground. Her heart pounding with dread, she approached the still form, fearing what she might find. The bear was large, with dark brown fur, but it wasn't Willow. This was a male bear, younger than Willow, with a distinctive white patch on his chest. He had been shot in the shoulder, the wound bleeding steadily onto the forest floor. "He's alive," Olivia called to Marcus, who was reading the poachers their rights while keeping them covered. "But he needs immediate medical attention." She knelt beside the injured bear, knowing she had to slow the bleeding until help arrived. The bear's eyes were open, watching her with a mixture of pain and fear, but he made no move to attack. Whether from weakness or some instinctive trust, he allowed Olivia to examine the wound. As she worked to apply pressure with a field dressing from her kit, a sound from the forest edge made her look up. There, partially concealed by the undergrowth, stood Willow and her cubs. They had been drawn by the gunshot, perhaps, or by some bear sense that one of their kind was in danger. Willow's eyes met Olivia's across the clearing, and in that moment, Olivia felt a shock of recognition. The wounded bear at her feet wasn't a random victim. The white chest patch, the distinctive scar across his muzzle that she could now see clearly. This was one of Willow's cubs from the previous year. A cub that had grown, matured, and sat out on his own, as young male bears do, only to cross paths with poachers on this of all days. "Marcus," Olivia called softly, "look at the tree line. Carefully." Marcus glanced up from the restrained poachers, his eyes widening as he spotted Willow. "Is that—" "Yes. And this," Olivia said, nodding toward the wounded bear beneath her hands, "is her son from last year. I recognize the markings." As if in confirmation, Willow took a step into the clearing, making that familiar chuffing sound. The wounded bear responded with a weak rumble, confirming the family connection. The poachers, hearing the new bear sounds, twisted their heads to look. Another one, the one who had wielded the rifle, hissed, worth double what this one would have brought. Marcus tightened the zip ties, his expression disgusted. "You've got more important things to worry about than profit margins right now." The radio at his belt crackled to life. The other teams had arrived at the valley and were heading their way. Soon, the clearing would be filled with rangers and police. Olivia returned her attention to the wounded bear, continuing to apply pressure to slow the bleeding. She was acutely aware of Willow watching from the edge of the clearing, the mother bear's posture tense but not aggressive. It was as if she understood that Olivia was trying to help her son, just as Olivia and Marcus had helped her a year ago. "The bullet needs to come out," Marcus said, kneeling beside Olivia after ensuring the poachers were secure. "And we need to get antibiotics into him right away." "I know," Olivia replied, "but we can't move him like this, and the mobile veterinary unit is at least an hour away." The wounded bear's breathing had become more labored, his eyes growing dull with pain and blood loss. Without immediate intervention, he might not survive. In that moment, Olivia made a decision that defied all wildlife management protocols for the second time in her career. "We need to help him now, Marcus, not in an hour." Before Marcus could protest, Olivia turned toward the forest edge where Willow stood watching. Slowly, deliberately, she extended a hand toward the mother bear, palm up. the same gesture of trust that Emma had instinctively offered a year ago. "We need your trust again," she said softly, not caring how strange it might seem to speak directly to a wild animal. "Your son needs help just like you did." Marcus watched in astonishment as Willow took another step into the clearing, then another. Her cubs stayed at the forest edge, but the mother bear approached cautiously, her eyes never leaving Olivia's. "Liv, what are you doing?" Marcus whispered urgently. "Creating a miracle," Olivia replied, her hand still extended toward Willow. "Again." Willow stopped a few feet away, her massive head lowered to examine her wounded son. She sniffed the injury, then looked up at Olivia with what could only be described as pleading in her dark eyes. "I know," Olivia said softly. "I'll try." She opened her field kit and took out the emergency medical supplies she carried. Not nearly enough for a proper treatment, but perhaps enough to stabilize the young bear until professional help arrived. "I need to clean the wound and remove the bullet if it's accessible," she told Marcus. "It's going to hurt him and he might react. Can you be ready with the tranquilizer?" Marcus nodded, retrieving the dart gun from his pack. "This is absolutely against protocol." "So, was approaching an injured bear with my baby," Olivia reminded him. "Sometimes protocol doesn't account for whatever this is." She gestured to Willow, who had settled beside her injured son, making soft sounds that seemed to soothe him. As Olivia began cleaning the wound, the young bear growled in pain, but made no move to attack. Willow remained by his side, occasionally touching her nose to his face in what looked remarkably like comfort. It was a scene that defied everything Olivia had been taught about wild animal behavior. A mother bear allowing humans to touch her injured son, seeming to understand that they were trying to help. The sound of approaching voices signaled the arrival of the other ranger teams. Olivia worked faster, knowing that more people might spook Willow. She located the bullet mercifully close to the surface and with steady hands extracted it using the field forceps from her kit. "Bullet's out," she told Marcus, "but he needs antibiotics and proper wound treatment, and he's lost a lot of blood." Marcus nodded, already on the radio calling for the mobile veterinary unit to hurry. "ETA 30 minutes, he reported. "They're bringing plasma and a full surgical kit." The young bear's eyes had closed, his breathing shallow but steady. Olivia applied a pressure bandage to the wound, the best she could do with her limited supplies. Throughout it all, Willow remained vigilant but calm, her presence a constant reminder of the extraordinary trust she had placed in these humans. As the rest of the team arrived at the clearing, they stopped in amazement at the scene before them. 2 poachers zip-tied on the ground, a wounded bear receiving emergency treatment, and a full-grown mother grizzly sitting calmly beside Olivia, as if they were old friends. "Nobody make any sudden moves," Marcus called to the newcomers. "And keep your distance, this is a special situation." One of the police officers approached cautiously to take custody of the poachers. "We've been after these 2 for months," he told Marcus quietly. "They're part of a larger ring that's been targeting bears throughout the northern Rockies. Bear gallbladders sell for thousands on the black market." Olivia heard this with a surge of anger, her hands still working to stabilize the wounded bear. These men had nearly killed Willow's son, would have killed Willow too if they'd had the chance, all for profit. The thought made her sick. The distant sound of a vehicle announced the arrival of the mobile veterinary unit. As the white van bounced down the rough track toward the clearing, Willow became restless, shifting her weight and eyeing the newcomers with suspicion. "It's okay," Olivia told her softly. "They're here to help, like before." She wasn't sure if Willow could possibly understand her words, but the bear seemed to respond to her calm tone, settling back beside her son. Dr. Peterson, the park's senior wildlife veterinarian, emerged from the van and stopped short at the sight that greeted him. "That's not possible," he said, staring at Willow sitting peacefully beside humans working on her injured son. "That's what we said last year," Marcus replied with a hint of a smile. "And yet, here we are." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. The veterinary team, moving with deliberate slowness under Olivia's guidance, set up a field treatment station around the wounded bear. Willow watched every movement but made no aggressive gestures, seeming to understand that these strangers were helping her son. "The bullet missed major arteries," Dr. Peterson reported after a thorough examination. "With proper treatment, he should make a full recovery." The poachers were loaded into a police vehicle and taken away to face charges. The other rangers maintained a perimeter around the clearing, keeping curious hikers away from the extraordinary scene. As the veterinary team prepared to transport the wounded bear to the rehabilitation facility, Olivia found herself facing a new problem. Willow clearly had no intention of being separated from her son. The mother bear grew increasingly agitated as they loaded the unconscious young bear onto a stretcher. "We can't take her too," Dr. Peterson said firmly. "The facility isn't set up for multiple bears, especially not an uninjured adult." Olivia looked at Willow, seeing the distress in her intelligent eyes. "She won't let him go without her, and I don't think we should force her to." A tense discussion followed, with Marcus finally proposing a compromise. They would set up a temporary enclosure adjacent to the rehabilitation facility, allowing Willow to remain close to her son during his recovery without interfering with his medical treatment. "It's unprecedented, Doctor," Peterson grumbled. "But then, so is everything about this situation." As they carefully loaded the wounded bear into the van, Willow followed, keeping a watchful eye on her son. When the doors closed, cutting off her view, she let out a distressed sound that tore at Olivia's heart. "She can follow us," Olivia told the others, an idea forming. I think she'll understand if we show her where we're taking him." Marcus looked skeptical. "You want a wild grizzly to follow our vehicles through the park?" "Not through the park," Olivia clarified. "Through the forest. The rehabilitation center borders the eastern wilderness. If we drive slowly along the forest road, I think Willow will parallel us through the trees. She's smart enough to understand." It was a crazy plan, but no crazier than anything else that had happened that day. To everyone's amazement, it worked. As the veterinary van moved slowly along the forest road, Willow and her cubs kept pace in the trees beside them, occasionally visible through breaks in the foliage. When they reached the rehabilitation center, the team quickly transferred the wounded bear to a treatment area. Olivia stayed outside, watching as Willow emerged from the forest edge, her cubs behind her. The mother bear stood at the tree line, watching the building where her son had disappeared, her posture alert but not threatening. "Now what?" Marcus asked, coming to stand beside Olivia. "We can't exactly invite her in for visiting hours." Olivia considered the problem. "Let's set up that temporary enclosure you suggested. Something visible from where she's standing, with a clear view of her son's recovery area. I think she'll stay nearby as long as he's here." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the clearing, the park staff worked to create a safe space for the recovering bear and a viewpoint for his vigilant mother. Olivia stayed until the work was complete, watching as Willow settled at the forest edge, her cubs curled beside her. The mother bear's eyes remained fixed on the building, waiting, watching, trusting. Only when everything was settled did Olivia remember Emma, still at the education center with Sarah. She checked her watch, shocked to find that nearly 6 hours had passed since she had left her daughter. "I need to get back to Emma," she told Marcus. "Can you handle things here?" Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful as he gazed at Willow and her cubs. "You know, in 20 years of wildlife management, I've never seen anything like what happened today, or last year for that matter." "I know," Olivia said softly. "It's like she remembers. Not just what happened, but who helped her, who she can trust." He shook his head in wonder. "And now her son." "Maybe there are connections we don't understand," Olivia suggested. "Between species, between mothers, between those who help and those who are helped." Marcus smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe you and Emma just have a way with bears." As Olivia turned to leave, she looked once more at Willow, keeping her faithful vigil. "Thank you," she whispered, not sure if she was thanking the bear for her trust or for something larger, for showing her a world where boundaries between wild and human could blur, where compassion could flow both ways, across the divide. Willow's eyes met hers, dark and knowing, before returning to their watch over her son. No words were needed between them, just understanding, and the promise of more miracles to come. The next morning, Olivia brought Emma to the Rehabilitation Center. She had debated whether it was appropriate to bring a toddler so close to wild bears, but something told her Emma needed to be there, that her presence was somehow important to this unfolding story. Sarah from the Education Center had come along as well, fascinated by what Olivia had told her about Willow and eager to document this unprecedented interaction for her wildlife behavior research. "I still can't quite believe what you're describing," Sarah said as they parked outside the center. "A mother bear voluntarily staying near humans, allowing medical intervention for her offspring. It goes against everything we know about bear behavior." Olivia unbuckled Emma from her car seat. "I know. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it either." She lifted Emma into her arms and pointed toward the forest edge where Willow and her remaining cub had spent the night. "Look, sweetie, your bears are still here." Emma squealed with delight, waving her small hand. "Hi, bears." To Sarah's astonishment, Willow's head turned at the sound of Emma's voice, her attention immediately drawn to the child. The mother bear rose from her resting place and moved closer to the fence line that marked the Rehabilitation Center's boundary, her eyes fixed on Emma. "That's remarkable," Sarah breathed, watching as Willow stopped at the fence, her posture relaxed despite the proximity of humans. "It's almost like she recognizes Emma specifically." Olivia nodded. "I think she does." Marcus emerged from the main building, a clipboard in hand, his face breaking into a smile when he saw them. "Perfect timing," he called. "Our patient is awake and doing well. The bullet wound is clean, no sign of infection, and his vitals are strong." "Can we see him?" Olivia asked, setting Emma down but keeping a firm hold on her hand. "Briefly," Marcus agreed. "Dr. Peterson wants to minimize human contact, but he's made an exception in your case, considering the unusual circumstances." They followed Marcus to a large enclosure at the back of the facility, specially designed for rehabilitating injured bears. Through a reinforced observation window, they could see the young male bear lying on a bed of straw, his injured shoulder bandaged. He was awake, his eyes alert as he tracked their movement through the window. "He's responding well to treatment," Marcus explained. "Dr. Peterson removed some bullet fragments this morning, but the initial field care you provided prevented serious infection. He should make a full recovery." Emma pressed her face against the glass, utterly fascinated by the bear. "Hurt bear," she said solemnly, recognizing the bandages. "Kiss better?" Olivia smiled at her daughter's innocent empathy. No, sweetie, we can't kiss him better. The doctors are helping him, like when you got your shots at the pediatrician. The young bear had risen to his feet, moving with careful deliberation as he approached the window. Despite his injured state, he showed remarkable interest in the humans watching him, particularly Emma. "This is incredible," Sarah murmured, recording observations in her notebook. "He should be displaying stress behaviors in the presence of humans, especially after being injured by poachers. Instead, he seems curious." "Like mother, like son," Marcus commented. Willow must have communicated something about humans to her offspring, some indication that certain humans can be trusted. The thought was revolutionary in terms of wildlife behavior. Bears were known to teach their cubs survival skills, fishing, foraging, denning. But the idea that they might pass on specific information about human trustworthiness challenged every established understanding of bear cognition. As they watched, the young bear placed his uninjured paw against the glass directly opposite where Emma's small hand rested, a moment so poignant that Sarah gasped audibly. "I need to document this," she said, taking out her phone to photograph the interaction. "This could revolutionize our understanding of bear-human relationships." After visiting the recovering bear, they went outside to observe Willow, who remained at the fence line, her attention divided between the building housing her son and the humans who had emerged from it. "I want to try something," Olivia said suddenly. She knelt beside Emma. "Sweetie, can you wave to the mama bear like you did yesterday?" Emma nodded enthusiastically and waved both hands. "Hi, bear mama." Willow's reaction was immediate and astonishing. She raised one massive paw and moved it back and forth in a gesture that unmistakably mimicked Emma's wave. Sarah nearly dropped her notebook. That's not possible," she whispered. "Bears don't wave. They don't mimic human gestures." "This one does," Olivia said quietly, watching as Emma giggled and waved again, prompting another wave from Willow. "She's been watching us, learning from us, just as her cubs learned from her." The implications were staggering. If bears could not only recognize individual humans, but also mimic their gestures, communicate across species lines, and pass this knowledge to their offspring, everything science thought it knew about bear intelligence would need to be reconsidered. Marcus, who had been watching silently, shook his head in wonder. "You know what this reminds me of? Those stories from frontier days. Accounts of bears and humans forming unusual bonds that were dismissed as tall tales or folklore." Sarah nodded eagerly. "Native American traditions often speak of bears as teachers, as beings with wisdom that can be shared with humans under the right circumstances." She gestured toward Willow and Emma, still engaged in their waving game. "Perhaps those weren't just stories. Perhaps we've simply forgotten how to listen, how to connect." As the adults discussed the scientific and cultural implications, Emma had grown restless. She tugged at Olivia's hand. "Bear sad," she declared, pointing at Willow. "Mrs. Baby." Olivia knelt beside her daughter, struck once again by the emotional intelligence Emma displayed when it came to the bears. "Yes, sweetie. She misses her son. He's hurt and she can't be with him." Emma considered this with the serious expression that sometimes made her look far older than her 2 years. "Show her," she said firmly. "Show her what, honey?" "Bear baby, show mama." The simplicity and brilliance of Emma's suggestion hit Olivia like a thunderbolt. "Of course." Willow couldn't see her son from where she waited at the fence line. She could smell him, sense his presence, but she couldn't see that he was healing, that he was safe. "Marcus," Olivia said urgently, Can we move him closer to the observation window that faces the forest, so Willow can see him? Marcus hesitated, glancing at Sarah, who was nodding enthusiastically. It's not protocol, but he smiled wryly. Nothing about this situation follows protocol anyway. Let me talk to Dr. Peterson. 20 minutes later, after a heated discussion with the wildlife veterinarian, they had arranged for the young bear to be carefully moved to a recovery area, with a large window facing the forest edge where Willow kept her vigil. The window was reinforced safety glass, strong enough to withstand even a bear's strength, but completely transparent. As Marcus and Dr. Peterson supervised the transfer, Olivia took Emma to where Willow waited at the fence line. The mother bear seemed to sense that something important was happening. She stood alert, her remaining cub pressed against her side, watching intently as humans moved around the building. "It's okay," Olivia said softly to Willow. "We're going to show you your son. You'll see that he's getting better." Whether Willow understood the words or simply the gentle tone, she remained calm, her eyes following Olivia and Emma as they moved along the fence toward the window where her son would soon be visible. Inside the building, the team had successfully transferred the young bear to the new recovery space. He was groggy from mild sedation but awake enough to be aware of his surroundings. The bandage on his shoulder was clean and white, a stark contrast to his dark fur. "Okay," Marcus called from the doorway. "We're ready. The blinds will open in 3, 2, 1. The mechanical blinds covering the large observation window slowly rose, revealing the recovering bear inside. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then Willow made a sound. Not a growl or a roar, but a soft, plaintive call that Olivia had heard her use with her cubs. A mother's voice calling to her child. Inside the recovery space, the young bear's head lifted at the sound. Despite his sedation, he recognized his mother's call. He struggled to his feet, swaying slightly, and moved toward the window where he could see Willow standing beyond the fence. What followed was one of the most extraordinary moments Olivia had ever witnessed. Mother and son, separated by glass and fence but connected by sight and sound, communicated in a language of gentle huffs, soft moans, and subtle body movements. Willow placed her paw against the fence, reaching toward her son. Inside, the young bear mirrored the gesture, his paw pressing against the glass. There wasn't a dry eye among the humans watching. Even Dr. Peterson, who had initially objected to the unorthodox arrangement, stood in silent awe at the depth of emotion being displayed by these animals, creatures that science had long considered incapable of such complex feelings. "They love each other," Emma said simply, verbalizing what everyone was thinking. "Like you love me, Mama." Olivia knelt and gathered her daughter into her arms, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, baby, just like that." In that moment, the distance between species seemed to vanish. The essential connection of mother and child, the universal language of love and protection, transcended the boundaries between human and bear. In Willow's devotion to her injured son, Olivia saw a reflection of her own fierce love for Emma. In the young bear's trust of the humans who had saved him, she saw Emma's innocent belief that the world was fundamentally good and kind. Days turned into weeks as the young bear, whom they had named Archer for the arc of his journey from victim to survivor, continued to heal. Willow remained at the forest edge, a constant presence, watching over her son's recovery. Park visitors began to hear the story, and a quiet observation area was established where people could witness from a safe distance the extraordinary bond between the bear family and the humans who had saved them. Researchers came from universities across the country to document what many were calling a watershed moment in understanding animal cognition. Sarah's careful observations formed the foundation of a groundbreaking paper on cross-species communication and emotional intelligence in bears. Through it all, Emma visited Archer and Willow nearly every day, her innocent presence a bridge between worlds. She drew pictures for her bears, which Olivia taped to the inside of Archer's window. The young bear would sniff at them curiously, while Willow watched from beyond the fence, her calm acceptance of humans growing with each peaceful interaction. 6 weeks after the shooting, Dr. Peterson declared Archer fully healed and ready for release. A date was set. Media were notified, though kept at a respectful distance, and final preparations were made for the young bear's return to the wild. The morning of the release dawned clear and cool, with early autumn painting the forest in gold and crimson. Olivia dressed Emma warmly, trying to explain the significance of what would happen today. "Archer is all better now," she told her daughter as they drove to the Rehabilitation Center. "So today he gets to go home with his mama." Emma nodded solemnly. Bears go home, but will they come back? The question caught Olivia off guard. She hadn't considered how Emma might feel about saying goodbye to the bears who had become such an important part of their lives. "They need to be free, sweetie, to live in the forest where they belong." "But we're friends," Emma insisted, her lower lip trembling slightly. "Friends come back." Olivia reached over to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Yes, they do. And maybe, someday, we'll see them again." The release had been carefully planned. Instead of transporting Archer to a distant location, as was standard practice, the team had decided to release him directly to Willow from the Rehabilitation Center. It was unprecedented, but then everything about this situation had broken new ground. A small group gathered at a safe distance: Olivia and Emma, Marcus, Sarah, Dr. Peterson, and a few other staff members who had been involved in Archer's care. No one spoke as the large door to Archer's enclosure was remotely unlocked and slowly opened to the outside world. For a long moment, nothing happened. Archer stood in the doorway, sniffing the air, perhaps sensing freedom but hesitant to take that final step. Willow, who had been waiting at her usual spot by the fence, now stood just beyond the open door, her remaining cub beside her. She made that familiar chuffing sound, calling to her son. With careful steps, Archer emerged from the enclosure. His healed shoulder showed barely a limp as he moved toward his mother. When they met, Willow gently nuzzled him, inspecting him thoroughly as if checking that he was truly whole again. The younger cub bounced excitedly around its returned brother, clearly recognizing him despite the weeks of separation. Emma, watching from Olivia's arms, waved one small hand. "Bye-bye, bears," she called softly. "Be safe." As if hearing her, all 3 bears paused and looked toward the humans. Willow's gaze found Emma and Olivia, and in a gesture that would later be described in scientific journals and nature documentaries, she raised her paw and moved it in what could only be seen as a wave of farewell. Then, with a last look at the humans who had saved her son, Willow led her family toward the deep forest. They paused at the tree line, 3 dark silhouettes against the vibrant autumn foliage, before disappearing into the wilderness that was their true home. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she held Emma close. "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" she whispered to Marcus, who stood beside them. He smiled, placing a gentle hand on Emma's curly head. "If there's one. Thing I've learned from all this, it's to never underestimate the connections that can form between species, between hearts." He looked toward the forest where the bears had vanished. "I have a feeling this isn't the end of your story with Willow and her family." Emma, her small face serious, nodded as if she understood perfectly. "Bears remember," she said with absolute certainty. "And we remember too." Olivia kissed her daughter's forehead, marveling at the wisdom that sometimes emerged from her child's innocent heart. "Yes, sweetheart, we'll remember. Always." As they walked back to their car, Emma, chattering about the bears and already asking when they could visit the forest again, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude for the extraordinary gift they had been given. In saving Willow, they had discovered a connection that transcended the boundaries between wild and human, a reminder that compassion could flow both ways across seemingly uncrossable divides. And somewhere in the deep forest, a mother bear led her cubs home, carrying with her the memory of human hands that had healed instead of harmed, of a child's fearless love that had bridged two worlds, and of a bond that neither wilderness nor time could ever truly break. In the years that followed, hikers would occasionally report seeing a female grizzly with distinctive markings, who didn't retreat when humans approached, but instead watched them with intelligent eyes before continuing peacefully on her way. And sometimes, they said, she would pause at the edge of clearings, raise her paw in what looked remarkably like a wave, and then disappear back into the forest that was her kingdom. The rangers never confirmed these stories officially, but Olivia, listening to the reports with a knowing smile, would simply say, "The wilderness holds more wonders than we can imagine. We just need the heart to see them." And Emma, growing taller and wiser with each passing year, but never losing her special connection to the wild things, would nod and add, "And the courage to reach out our hands in friendship, even when we're afraid." For in the end, that was the greatest lesson Willow had taught them all, that sometimes the most profound healing begins with a single gesture of trust, with the brave choice to see beyond fear to the possibility of connection. And in that connection, human and bear alike could find something precious and rare, a family that transcended species, bound together by the universal language of compassion that needed no words to be understood.